Welcome back to r/LegalAdvice, where we read surprisingly interesting stories that usually don't end in a cliffhanger. If you are new to my channel, please feel free to subscribe to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right in. And the first one is titled Landlord Banning Guns Mid-Lease. I live in an apartment complex and I have a particularly dumbass neighbor who got drunk and shot a hole in his wall earlier this week. I received an email this morning from my property management saying that due to the incident effective this coming Monday, they were banning all possession of firearms within the building and that anyone who owned guns had to have them out by then. They also said that they would start entering units to check by Wednesday. I have 4 guns that I have literally nowhere else to store. I have a lease that goes from 1st August 2016 to 31st July 2017 that makes no mention of gun ownership one way or another, and I have lurked here enough to know that landlords generally cannot make mid-lease changes unilaterally like this, but I wanted to make sure that there are not any exceptions for that when it comes to firearms. The lease does not mention anything about their ability to make changes either, and I specifically asked about their gun policy when I signed to make sure it was okay. I'm also curious about the extent to which they can search my apartment if they actually go through with checking. I keep my safe inside a drawer in my desk, so I want to know, are they allowed to root through my desk and stuff even if they give notice? I would appreciate any help/advice, thanks. And a user in the comments said, there are no exceptions which allow the landlord to change the terms mid-lease for firearms. They cannot make any changes to the lease without your agreement, just as you cannot make changes without their agreement. They cannot force you to sign an addendum to the lease, and they cannot evict you for legally possessing firearms. They can elect not to renew your lease after it expires. The idea that they may enter your home and search your personal possessions is ridiculous. They may enter your home with proper notice, only to effect repairs or inspect the general state of the apartment. They cannot rummage through your things. And guys, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in the US the right to bear arms is protected by the Second Amendment. So wouldn't this also extend to rental agreements? Does it say anywhere in your rental contract that you're not allowed to have guns inside your home? I am genuinely curious, please let us know in the comments, and I'm curious also about what would you do if your landlord threatened to take your guns away. Next one is an update to the landlord banning guns story. I wanted to give you all an update on this situation and also to thank everyone for their advice when I first posted about this. I got an email on Monday morning saying that they were not going to go through with the gun ban. As far as I can tell, they did not enter mine or anyone else's apartment to check for guns, though I did take your guys' suggestion and clean up all my gun stuff and hide it away, which really needed to happen anyway because it was a mess. I did learn an interesting piece of gossip though. It turns out I have a friend of a friend who works in my property manager's office. From what she told me, apparently their lawyer was not consulted about this at all, but he was CC'd on the email sent out to residents. She would not give me any specific information, but apparently the ensuing storm of emails and conference calls was something to behold, and the manager responsible is in serious trouble. And guys, before we continue to the next story, I would just like to ask you, are you interested in hearing stories from the r/relationship advice subreddit? Let me know in the comments because there are certainly some very good topics on that subreddit. And the next one is titled Complicated Situation, My Relative Was Murdered. My cousin impersonated a relative of the murderer, filed a lawsuit against our family and hired a private investigator to harass us. The situation is the following. A relative of mine was murdered, someone was arrested for it, my cousin has gone and done something stupid, and I'm afraid it will somehow screw up the case against him enough where he will get off or get less time. I don't endorse her actions. What happened was that she pretended to be the cousin of the murderer. She filed a lawsuit against our family while impersonating this person and also hired a private investigator in that person's name to follow members of our family around. I don't know what she told the investigator to get them to do this. I guess her intent was to make the murderer's family look bad, but this relative she decided to impersonate is actually not a criminal like the murderer, and she really does not have much to do with him. My cousin has been caught in her lie. Is this identity theft even though she did not steal money or get a fake credit card? Did she break the law? Some of my other relatives say no, she's 19 and has never been arrested before. I am really upset and hope she's charged with something for this. Location: the state of California. In order to file a lawsuit, would have to attest who the hell she is, so at the very least she committed contempt of court. Does she have a disability? This does not appear to be the actions of a rational person. Another person said, I would imagine perjury as well, which I believe is a felony in OP's state of California. And this story probably gets the prize for the most complicated story we have read so far. And the next one is an update to the complicated story. My cousin has been arrested on several charges for perjury, identity theft and harassment. Apparently, the police knew and were investigating what she did before she even knew she was found out. There has already been backlash against our family because of her actions. The murderer was a gangbanger and his cousin who she impersonated is not a criminal and has nothing to do with him. It looks like the murderer's cousin is considering a restraining order and lawsuit against my cousin. I am so angry at my cousin for what she did. Thanks again, everyone. And the next one is titled, I, male, was attacked in public. My attacker and his girlfriend were injured and I was not. The officer falsified my testimony and arrested me and not them. First, some background. Back in March, the now former promoter of my band got intoxicated and grabbed me by the neck and tried to make out with me. I should mention, this guy has an extensive history of violent behavior and several restraining orders active against him. I verbally told him to let go multiple times and tried pushing him away to no avail. So I threw him to the ground using basic judo techniques, blackening his eye. He claimed I also broke 2 of his ribs. He then got up and proceeded to try and fight me for a good 10 minutes while he was being physically restrained by multiple people. For the past 6 months, he has been harassing and threatening me in numerous ways, both publicly and privately, as well as on Facebook. He made explicit and implied threats against my health and my life numerous times. He also went out of his way to get my band blacklisted from a venue, and then when we were allowed to play again, he denied we were ever blacklisted. I attempted to file a restraining order against him and the judge laughed at me in the courtroom before denying my request. After leaving the courtroom, my attacker was just down the road walking towards me, so I got on my bike and left. Last week I had just finished working at the state fair on the last day and I see him and his girlfriend walking up while I am talking to a friend. As soon as he sees me, he starts yelling things like, "Oh, I cannot believe they allow a child molester in the fair around all these kids." He made that up in an attempt to turn the crowd against me. My friend asks, is this guy a friend of yours? And I reply, no, he's been harassing and threatening me for months. I then tell the guy, who's still yelling profanities at me as he walks by, to keep talking crap, that's all you ever do. He then walks up beside me and puts his arm around my neck and begins to choke me while saying, "This piece of crap right here." As soon as he put his arm around my neck, I headbutted him and punched him in the face, then took him to the ground and held him until passerby broke it up. As soon as we get stood up, I see that both him and his girlfriend are bleeding, him from 2 large cuts above and below his eye, and her from 2 tiny cuts above her nose. They start yelling that I shattered a bottle on the girl's face and that I attacked them for no reason as a progressively larger crowd forms. Then an older man who owned a booth came up and shouted, "That is not true, you two started it." My coworker who was working nearby shouted for me to come over, and as I started walking I noticed my attackers were following me. Then a shouting match ensued between them, me and people in the crowd who saw the event and were shouting them down because, you guessed it, they saw them start both the verbal and physical conflict. Then the girl starts walking towards me again, talking about how her friends were coming after me before a different passerby got between us and told her she needed to back the F off because, you guessed it, they started it and I was just defending myself. Now here is where things get really effed up. The police were called, obviously, and security got there first and stood with me while multiple people came up and said they saw what happened and would tell the police that the other people started it and I was just defending myself. The older man who owned a booth came up and agreed to talk to the officer with me. We went to security and when the officer showed up I told him what happened. And he spoke to the one witness that came inside the security building with me. And the witness, you guessed it right again, told the officer that the other people started it and I was just defending myself. The officer and the witness leave the room and a few minutes later the officer comes back, places me in handcuffs and tells me I'm being arrested for 2 counts of causing serious injury to another with a dangerous object. I am fairly confused at this point. While we were in the car, the officer radios ahead to tell the jail that the suspect is being extremely cooperative. In jail, the corrections officer remarks, "You have nothing on your record. Not even a parking ticket. Why the hell are you being arrested for 2 counts of felony assault?" I explain the condensed version of what happened. I then take the breathalyzer and blow a 0.00. I don't drink and have not had a drop of alcohol for years. I then spend the night in jail and get brought into a video conference with a judge about 20 hours later. I then finally get to see the police report. The so-called victims were not charged with anything, despite their sworn testimony stating that the male put his hand around my neck. Their sworn testimony was they were saying, "Hey effer," because that is how punks greet each other and were just coming up to give me a hug. And that I shattered a bottle on the girl's face and hit the guy with it for no apparent reason. I then look at the officer's testimony. He notes that there was no broken glass at the scene and that a witness said they started it. But he also falsified my entire testimony. He claimed that I claimed A. that they were following me around the entire day. I said the male had been harassing me for 6 months after sexually assaulting me. B. that I admitted to hitting them with a beer bottle. I definitely did not say that. I had a plastic bag full of stuff I bought at the fair that I was taking home, but I did not hit anyone with any of it. C. that I did not mean to hurt the girl, and I said verbatim, I have no idea how she got hurt. D. that the man put me in a headlock. I said he put his arm around my neck and started choking me. There is a myriad of ways to choke someone with your hands and arms that are not headlocks, and I said nothing about a headlock. During my arraignment, after finding sufficient evidence for the case to proceed, the judge asks, "Does my name have any previous felonies?" The response off screen, teleconference, comes like this. No, he does not. The judge pauses. "Does he have any misdemeanors I should be aware of?" The response again from off screen, no, he has no prior criminal record whatsoever. We believe alcohol was involved because of the mention of the bottle. I shook my head in disbelief. Again, I don't drink and I blew a 0.00. I was released on unsecured bond. Not 2 minutes after being released from jail, I was stopped by someone who saw you wreck that douchebag yesterday, and he was stunned to find out that I was being charged and not my attackers. I showed him the police report and he said, "That's bullcrap. I will go to court for you, man. You were just defending yourself. They straight up attacked you." I then returned to the fair and found several other witnesses who agreed to testify and were all shocked that I was arrested. When I finally got home, I found out from a friend who also witnessed the entire incident that when the police showed up, they shooed away everyone that was trying to give their testimony. There were people waiting outside the front of the security office and the officers took me out the back. So, besides getting a lawyer, I have no idea what to do. All I did was defend myself and try to get away. There were at least a dozen witnesses that can all verify my story, as well as a dozens of people that can testify to the victims threatening me and harassing me. Not to mention the fact that the human skull shatters at 10 joules less force than a glass bottle. Look it up. However, my attackers were bleeding and I only had a scraped up knee. I was literally arrested for successfully defending myself against an attacker. And now my life is in danger of being ruined and I'm facing up to 12 years in jail. If I go to jail again, even between the grand jury and the trial, I'm afraid they will attack my wife. I'm scared, stressed and angry at the whole situation. From my arrest to my attackers not being arrested, to the police officer falsifying my testimony, to the state attorney suggesting I was drunk instead of scrutinizing my attackers just wanting to hack me's story. And need something more than find a lawyer. Is there a place to file a complaint against the officer, or what the F do I do? Someone in the comments said the first thing you have to worry about is your 2 felony assault charges. Obviously, you're going to want to show that the officer's records are false at trial if it comes to that. You can worry about getting him in trouble for that after the charges are dropped. At this point, there really is not anything you can do besides finding a good attorney and following his advice. Going out of your way to contact the police or witnesses will influence your case and make it harder for your defense attorney to do his job. In criminal cases, it is definitely defense before offense. And another good advice comes from user Farrell in the comments. This: I'm not sure how big your town is or what its justice system is like with respect to who knows who is elected to what position, etc., but don't assume that just because you are right, that anyone in the justice system is going to be automatically sympathetic to you. Leo, and I guess that means law enforcement officers, can be very good about protecting their own. Even if one of them says otherwise, the likelihood of counting on their support in any official capacity is not very good. And I would not take it for granted that being innocent and having witnesses is enough to make a judge sympathetic to you or likely to take your word over the cops. Focus on getting a lawyer, keeping your head down, setting all ego aside and being polite through whatever process it takes to clear you of the charges. It is way easier to crusade for justice on this side of the bars than from inside. And it is not unheard of for someone who is innocent to accept a guilty plea to lower charges to avoid the risk of having to serve any time. Especially if you have a family and a job to worry about. Again, depending on the size of your town, etc., I would be hesitant to further alienate myself from Leo until you know that you are completely in the clear. With no probation requirements, etc., the last thing you need is drawing the ire of local LEO while on probation. They can make your life miserable enough that you will wish you had served time to begin with. The game currently has nothing to do with being right, it is about making it as easy as possible for your lawyers to keep you out of prison. By the way, I am not a lawyer, but I've had opportunities to observe the process at its finest. And wow guys, I really hope you have watched until here, because this story is one of the most interesting stories we have read so far, at least in my opinion. In addition, have you ever had to deal with corrupt police officers in your own life? Let us know in the comments. And the last one is an update to the attacked in public story. The state asked for an additional 10 days for the grand jury to seek evidence against me. My public defender lawyer agreed immediately and the judge granted it. I spent literally 30 seconds in the courtroom after my name was called before I was excused. See previous post for full story. Also, last time I posted, people made the weirdest assumptions and accusations. So here is some clarification and additional information. I had known both of them for about a year. The male's only injuries were a half cut above his left eye and a cut of similar size below the same eye. The female had 2 1cm cuts on and above the bridge of her nose. Relevant legal information, feel free to verify. I am being charged with 2 counts of felony Class C assault in the 3rd degree. And the following is written down. He/she with criminal negligence caused serious physical injury to another person by means of a dangerous instrument. In Alaska, dangerous instrument is defined as essentially any object that can be used to cause injury in any way, including bare hands. Yes, bare hands are specifically included. Alaska is a stand your ground state, and additionally you may also use lethal force or strike first in self-defense. I did not strike first, just providing information. Serious physical injury is defined as something that could cause death or actually causing permanent disfigurement or loss of function of an organ or limb. In Alaska, the defendant may not be involved in grand jury proceedings in any way, may not present evidence or call witnesses, and not even the defendant's lawyer can observe the proceedings. There are 2 lawyers following the case on my side, my public defender and a friend of a friend, as well as a private investigator working for my public defender. To quote my public defender, "This entire thing has blown way out of proportion. The police have been calling my friends, including my best friend and even the place I worked at the fair, multiple days in a row asking for witnesses. At this point, only the prosecution may call witnesses / present evidence. So, the prosecution does not want any information or witnesses that may exonerate me to come to light, including possible video footage of the incident which, if the video has the incident in frame and/or audio, would show them coming after me and attempting to incite violence against me and people in the crowd intervening on my behalf. One of my co-workers witnessed the entire event, and the rest of them, including the owners, have only nice things to say about me. Some of them are even going to the police to testify in person if they don't get more calls back. Naturally, the prosecution does not want this testimony to make it to the grand jury. According to the other lawyer, the state is scrambling to find any sort of evidence to justify my arrest and the charges against me, and is most likely going to lower the charges and offer me a plea bargain. Oh, by the way, the state of Alaska has no legal provision for expunging criminal records. I've been instructed to not accept any plea bargain, no matter the terms, as the state is now in a very awkward position and will probably try to double down to try and get me to admit to any sort of guilt and thus avoid a massive lawsuit for malicious prosecution, selective enforcement, wrongful imprisonment, etc. However, in 10 days I could still be faced with returning to jail to await trial for weeks or months and possibly facing bail that I cannot afford. Oh, by the way, the jail phone can only call landlines, no cell phones, and this is the year 2015. So, at the instruction of the public defender, I've started gathering contact info to give to the investigator on my side, currently about 6 actual witnesses, many witnesses to the guy and girl harassing, threatening and slandering me, and small novels worth of character witnesses. So now I'm asking Reddit for any additional legal advice. I know that a user said defense before offense, but I would appreciate any and all advice. I don't care if you believe my story or not, the subreddit rules and good sense prevent me from showing you evidence on my behalf. So keep your opinions on my perceived guilt and innocence up your ass where they belong, random internet gods of justice. I came here for advice. I can get the most relevant advice by being honest and anonymous. So, should I attempt to file a police report against the male, or will it be ignored? Should I reapply for a restraining order? Should I attempt to find a lawyer to handle a possible civil suit against my attackers and/or the state, or wait? As in, talk to a lawyer so we are better prepared based on how the case proceeds. Should my wife attempt to file a restraining order against them, or should I wait just here in limbo for the next 10 days? And a user in the comments said, I would wait and delete this thread while you're at it. Someone else said, sit in limbo, the police are not going to write another report about it, your civil trial can wait until the grand jury comes back. 10 days is nothing. OP, why would they work so hard to ignore the mountains of evidence almost literally pounding at their door? And then someone else answered, because they want to save face, even though if they just admitted to being wrong, the public would respect them more. So why not just drop charges, someone else asked. Then someone else answered, admitting being wrong increases public opinion of the department but lowers public opinion of the DA and police commissioner themselves. My guess is that it is elections time. And guys, I gotta be honest with you, I wanted to post this story actually weeks ago, but it took me so long to find the OP and contact him and actually get an answer that I can only post it now. Unfortunately, OP still wished to remain anonymous, and he does not want people to find the real case in the newspaper or something. So basically, the summary is, the charges were dropped and the attackers got punished. I know that is not the most satisfying update, but I will have to respect the OP's wish. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's content, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join our amazing community. Furthermore, don't forget to go to r/ripestories on Reddit to post your own stories if you want me to read them out in a video. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I see you again tomorrow.